toxic relationships can absolutely feel addicting and be much harder to leave than even a healthy relationship. And I know that this may sound crazy, but there's actually a very logical explanation for what is going on inside of your brain and your body, and that is exactly what we are talking about today. And if you are excited to learn all about that, go ahead and give me a like on this video. If you don't know me, my name is Kristin. I'm a life and relationship coach and a clinical hypnotherapist. So make sure that you subscribe to my channel for more content just like this every single week. Okay, so you know that the relationship is toxic on some level. You know it's unhealthy. You know you really don't feel that good a majority of the time. You maybe have even tried to leave, but you keep on coming back. I know exactly what that is like. I spent years in an abusive relationship, leaving, packing up my things at one point, leaving and coming right back. I felt absolutely crazy. I had no idea what was going on. I could not understand it. It was like this physical addiction that I had to this person. I was ashamed. I tried to hide a lot of the things that were going on in this relationship from my friends and my family because of these experiences. That right there is actually a huge, huge sign that a relationship is toxic. And I'm sharing these things with you because I know what it feels like to not understand yourself. I know what it feels like to feel like you are really, really alone and that no one else could possibly understand what you're going through. Because truthfully, you don't even understand yourself, but we are about to change all of that. And I think learning and understanding this information is one of the most important things to do on your healing journey, and really the journey of self-forgiveness. That unfortunately is one of the hardest things to do. I know that it kept me stuck for a really, really long time. It's easy to get caught up in the shame and the blame. And I'm hoping by the end of this video, you are going to be able to release some of that. Contrary to what you might think, this is actually a really common phenomenon, right? Like you've probably heard the cycle of abuse, that it's well known that people get stuck in abusive cycles, that maybe this is a pattern that you've seen in your own life. Maybe you are somebody who goes from one unhealthy relationship to the next, or if you're watching this and you're currently stuck in that situation, I know you know what I'm talking about now. That feeling, that pulling, that craving of this other person that you just want to get love from, even though they're hurting you. And there's a perfectly good explanation for this. This is a sure sign that you are in something called a trauma bond. A trauma bond is what it sounds like. It is a bond that is created on the basis of trauma. A trauma bond is a bond that you form with somebody else based on experiences from your early childhood relationships. And we're going to break this down even further. So if that sounds a little maybe confusing to you, totally okay right now. Really, it is the familiarity of emotional and physical cycles that you experienced as a child, largely before the age of 7 years old. This is a time when our subconscious is wide open and we are literally, our brains are like sponges that is just soaking in all of everything that we're learning. We're soaking in everything that our caretakers tell us, all of the behaviors that we see displayed. Those things become normal and familiar to us because our brains are wide open. As children, we have no ability to say, yes, I want to believe this, or no, I don't want to believe that. We have no ability to look at a relationship and think, this is healthy, this is not healthy. As a child, you have to live what you learn. That is how you survive. What your relationships were like and the dynamic of those relationships become what is familiar to you in your mind and in your body. And your brain perceives what is familiar as being safe because it's predictable. It doesn't matter if it is butterflies and rainbows and all beautiful things. That becomes safe because it's familiar. Or if it is horrendous, horrible things that happen, that becomes to your brain safe and familiar. And when you see that, it actually feels good. When your brain detects something that is familiar, you can actually feel chemistry, like you just click with somebody. And that is really just your brain recognizing and saying, I know what's going to happen here. I like this. I like this. And if you think about it, your body does so many things to remain the same. Our bodies don't like to change. Think about homeostasis. When we even differ just a degree on our temperature, it's considered a fever. Our bodies like to stay the same because the same is predictable. The same is safe. And that is exactly what is happening when you are getting into relationships. So if in your childhood that relationship dynamic was filled with invalidation, cycles of highs and lows emotionally, or let's get really specific here and say that you had a father that was emotionally unavailable, highly critical, and you meet a man who is emotionally unavailable and highly critical, that actually feels familiar to your brain, feels good, feels like chemistry. These are all things that are happening inside of your brain. It's all unconscious processing, because you can say consciously that you want a nice man that treats you well. But if you were to actually get that, you push it away because it's not familiar to you. It's like when people win the lottery and they have all of this money come in and they lose it, right? Like how many times have we heard that story of people who make all this money in the lottery and then a year later they're broke again? It's the same thing. It's being familiar. It's familiar to be broke. It's not familiar to have a lot of money, right? And this is even compounded further when we're talking about relationships. Because when you get into a relationship and you sense the familiarity, it starts to feel good. You sense that you have chemistry with that person. And then your brain releases something called oxytocin. Oxytocin is the love hormone. It's the hormone of connection. This is the hormone that goes off when we have a really nice, beautiful, long hug. And we just go, ah, and it just feels really good. That's oxytocin. Oxytocin is the hormone that goes crazy when a woman gives birth and she's in so much pain from giving birth, and instantly the baby comes out and she touches the baby on her chest, and that is a flood of oxytocin for that connection and to relieve the pain. So this hormone floods, right? We feel really good, we feel connected, we're feeling all of this beautiful chemistry, and then maybe some red flags start to show up, but because you're feeling so good and it's familiar and your brain is like, yes, this is familiar, don't worry about it, it's safe, it's all good, you really don't notice the red flags even. It's not something that is a deal breaker for you. It's just kind of something that you can just brush off pretty easily, because that is how powerful what is going on in your brain is. So over time, the relationship starts to reveal itself. Maybe this person becomes emotionally, mentally, physically abusive, one or all three. They cause you harm. They make you feel worthless, like you don't matter in this world. And then they are the same person that consoles you. They are the same person that you crave that love and safety and really that oxytocin from. Because what is happening inside of your brain at this time when you're experiencing the lows, your cortisol is shooting up, the stress hormone is shooting up. And when this is happening, we also have some exogenous hormones, but we really don't need to get into that. What's important is the cortisol shoots up, that's the stress hormone, and then we crave that oxytocin to be able to relieve the pain and to get us back into that connected, loving feeling that we had. We want that connection and that love feeling so badly, and we want it from that person. And as soon as you get it, it's kind of like what happens when the woman gives birth, and that pain and all of the things that just happened and the screaming and all of those things that happen just kind of fades away because we got that connection and we got that love, and now we can just rest in that. Now, as what happens in most toxic relationships is that they seem to get worse over time. You end up spending a lot more time in this low vibrational state, a lot more time in that high cortisol, a lot more time in the hurt, and you end up craving the love more and more and more. And you really focus on those good times, because sometimes it is good, right? Like, nobody here is in a relationship where at one point something good didn't happen, where at one point you felt like, I really love this person and they get me on some level and we're connected on some level, right? And you start to really just rely on that and focus on that. It's not bad all of the time. He doesn't abuse me all of the time. He's not mean all of the time. Sometimes he's nice. And it's kind of like, if you can think of playing lotto scratch-offs, because we were talking about the lotto earlier, right? People get addicted to those scratch-offs. They buy 20 scratch-offs at a time and just scratch off, scratch away. And then they win $5 and they're like, yes, I won $5. And they don't even think about the $100 that they maybe just spent on that. All they remember is the winnings. Like, that happens in gambling all the time. People only talk about the winnings. People only talk about the times that they've won. And how these things are working, it's intermittent reinforcement. So it's the same in this toxic relationship, in this trauma bond. It's being intermittently reinforced with some good things, with some positive things, with that feeling of love and connection. And you just so badly want to get back there every time you're not there. And that is really what is creating that craving feeling, that craving of, I have to have this and I have to have it from this person. Being in this kind of bond, in this kind of relationship, is literally like being addicted to drugs or alcohol. And I just really want you to understand that it is not your fault. You did not have control over what you learned subconsciously as a child. You do not have control over the neurobiological chemical reactions that are going in your body because of that. So I really hope that you can let yourself off the hook a little bit here. Because I know coming to this understanding for me allowed me to release so much. And I also want you to know that it's not some kind of doomsday thing, that because you've experienced this before, that you're ultimately going to be in trauma bonds for the rest of your life, or that they can't be broken. That is absolutely not true. What is familiar to you can be unfamiliar, and you can reprogram your mind to experience a new reality, become familiar in your mind and your body before you actually experience it in real life. You have done it many times before in your life. You have used new skills. You have picked up a fork the first time that you were eating and learned how to eat off a fork instead of using your hands. Even though the hands used to be familiar, now the fork is familiar, right? Humans are meant to adapt, and you can adapt and you can change. Awareness is really such a huge part of being able to get yourself out of the cycle, get yourself out of this trauma bond. And I know you are here learning this information, so you are already on your way to healing. If you liked this video, do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Next week, I am going in detail in exactly how to break a trauma bond, and you do not want to miss it. In the meantime, to get you into this healing space, check out this meditation that I uploaded about inner child healing, because that is one of the ways that you are going to be able to break the cycle of trauma bonds in your life.